Hello, I'm on my adventure again, and today I'm at a Druid's temple in Ilton, near Ripon in North Yorkshire. There is so much speculation about this temple, and even less is written about it. What we do know is that it was built in the 1800s by William Danby, who owned Swinton Hall Estate. I believe William Danby could have belonged to the Ancient Order of Druidry, which was having its second revival. At this time, Danby was deeply rooted in Freemasonry, and many Freemasons were also known to be Druids. Antiquarians had investigated Stonehenge at this time. John Aubrey and William Stuckley were both Freemasons, and between them many books were written on the romanticisms of Druidry and how through the ages many people had fallen under the spell of old stone monuments and been infected by Megalithomania. I believe Danby was also a very learned and well-travelled astronomer. He could see the relationship between Stonehenge and other stone circles, and their connection to heavenly bodies. As a Druid with astronomical knowledge and the cosmology of Celtic Druids, it wasn't long before he was inspired to build his Stonehenge and megaliths. As a reputable engineering architect, civil engineer and surveyor for many developments in Hong Kong, he had the know-how and the workforce to build his megaliths. On his return from Hong Kong, he designed the temple, hired unemployed workmen and stonemasons, and paid them 1 shilling per day to build his dream. He aligned the temple on the ley lines of other Neolithic stone circles in the area, and built many fanciful altars, standing stones, circles and megaliths on these ley lines. While reading his books, thoughts on various subjects, ideas and realities, and the dream of a staff, I felt a true connection with him, especially in the planning involved in building a stone circle myself. He wrote extensively on astroarchaeology, temples of the earth and the mind. I get a true sense that he was a mystic, and that a higher form inspired him. In his book, The Dream of a Staff, he writes,
"Temples being in everything that you see, which frees you from the custody of your body, you can have no entrance here, for men are created under the law, which obliges them to take care of that globe, which you see, in the middle of this universal temple, and which is called the earth, and to them, a mind is given from those eternal fires, which you call the stars, which being spherical, and animated, with divine intelligence, perform their revolutions, in the orbits which they move, with astonishing rapidity, wherefore you, O Publius, and all who venerate the gods, are bound to preserve your minds, in the keeping of your bodies, for it is not lawful, for you to quit the life you are now in unless it is the immediate will of the gods, who gave you your mind and body, for in so doing, you will have deserted the post assigned to you. Therefore, O Scipio, follow justice and piety, as your grandfather and I, who begot you, have done, and remember that as those virtues are great when exercised towards your own relations, they are the greatest of all when exercised in the service of your spirituality. With such a life is the proper way to the stars, and to the society of those who, being freed from the bodies in which they formerly lived, now inhabit the place you see. Looking around me, I beheld a shining circle, of the most dazzling brightness and surrounded by flames, which we, as having been taught by the Greeks, call the Milky Way, from whence all the other illustrious and wonderful objects were opened to my view. Among these were stars which we have never seen from our earth, and a magnitude of which we have no idea, and among these was that very small one, which, being the lowest in heaven and nearest to our earth, shone with a borrowed light. The spheres of the stars far surpassed that of the earth in magnitude, and the earth itself appeared so small that I was ashamed of our spirituality, which seined but a point in it. While my attention was more and more fixed on our earthy wherefore, says AMCAN News, do your regards dwell on so low an object? Do not you see what a temple you are now in? You may observe that all things are connected by 9 circles, or rather spheres, one of which is the most elevated and is exterior to all the rest, which it embraces, as being the supreme, impelling and comprehending the others, and in it the eternal revolutions of the stars are continually carried on. To this, 7 are appended, which revolve in a contrary direction from the rest of the heavens, and of these ones is occupied by the body which on earth is called Saturn. The next is that favorable and salutary flight, which proceeds from Jupiter. Next to this is the red and horrible fire of Mars, under which is the nearly middle region, possessed by the sun, the leader, prince, and moderator of the other lights, the soul of the world, which it regulates, and illumines, and fills all things.
I could quote more from his books than I have here, but he harnessed the power of the universe while building these stone structures, and I write about him with the deepest respect. With the initial stage of construction, everything was meticulously well researched, and the stone was chosen locally for its aesthetics and hum of the earth. The temple chambers contained the essential elements of water, fire, air, and earth. An outer stone screen was built to protect the solar chamber and harness the power of the sun and the moon. Stone stacks were built to represent deities and provide space to meditate and reflect. I have no idea to whom these monuments were attributed. Maybe it was the Celtics, the Egyptians, the Greeks, or the Romans. My bet lies in the Celtics. This temple and everything which survives around it is such a classical reference to Druid learning, and even though the evidence in Celtic texts on astronomical science were generally dismissed as being irrelevant to the study of megalithic monuments, Danby had a dream and this dream became a reality. Danby's understanding of astronomy created a sacred space that attracted followers from professional surveyors to clergymen and mystics, creating a wave of popular enthusiasm for megalithic sites. I wonder if Danby himself had buried treasure or relics of significance on the site. All this excitement about a collection of battered old rocks must seem puzzling to those without direct experience with Druidry or astroarchaeology. Those who visited must have been touched by Megalithomania, and those I spoke to came from many different backgrounds and walks of life. Some were astronomers, anthropologists, mystics, visionaries, artists and pagans, and just general walkers. It is unknown how long this project took Danby to complete, but I believe it's a wonderful tribute to the Neolithic, megalithic stone builders. I felt the energy of a place on my arrival, but I also knew dark magic had been used in a sacred place. The Druid's prayer of peace gave protection, and we had a wonderful stroll through the wooded area, where we found lots of megaliths and seating areas. I meditated at the site, and my mind was filled with robed sages, priests and priestesses. Rituals and ceremonies were being performed, and Danby popped in. He grinned ear to ear, nodding at me, knowing that his work was still being appreciated. Viewers and travellers might see these buildings as glorified follies, but you have to enter into the spirit of the place to have a truly wonderful experience. It would be wonderful to conduct a Druid ceremony at either the turn of the wheel or an equinox. I leave readers with this wonderful quote from John Michel's book. It is often said, usually by those who have not studied the subject, that the world of view and philosophy of the old Druids is lost beyond recall. But it is by no means impossible to regain, in the present age, the spirit of the original Druid philosophy. It is essential indeed to do so, for a revival of the old Druid way of thought, acknowledging the scarcity of a living earth and all its creatures, seems the only alternative to planetary dissolution. So I hope you've enjoyed this video, and you may travel to this wonderful Druid temple. I'd love to know what your thoughts are. Enjoy!